Hey everyone, welcome to season 12 of the Tension Podcast. We are a show that acknowledges most of life and faith is lived in the tension between the two extremes. Each week we look at what many of us were taught growing up in evangelical churches. We weigh it against what our current culture is saying, and we try to find what Jesus has for us in the tension between the two. If we haven't met, my name is Jonathan Carone, and we're joined as always by our co-host, Mr. Eric Williams. Eric, go ahead and say hey to the people.
Hey, five episodes in. Hopefully you're finding some honesty that's coming out. That's like, yeah, you know what? There are some things that I'd like to talk about, and maybe some things that if you're what was it? Was it maybe, I don't know if it was John Christ. I don't know. It's one of those Christian comedians are talking about, like somebody that's like too saved or super saved. Like, if you don't identify with something this season, you might be like super saved. You might be too saved. You might be too Christian for us, and that's okay.
I'm happy for you,
else,
but we're probably not going to hang out very much because I'm going to feel really bad about myself and make you feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Everyone else, welcome to our side of the swimming pool.
There's pee in it, by the way. Anyways, if you're new to us this season, we're spending 7 weeks talking about conversations that we think people are feeling but aren't having. And it's a little different than in the past. If you've been with us by this point, I probably don't have to give this disclaimer, but I'm assuming hopefully we have a new person listening this week. This season, our notes are less structured than they have been in the past because we're focused more on conversations than teaching. And that means this season's a little more messy. It's a little more unstructured. We take a little bit more time to get to the point because honestly, we haven't found the point before we start talking. A lot of times in our episodes, we kind of know where we want to go. And so the whole path is to get there. And this week, it's all about, we're going to talk about these things and we hope we find a point in the middle of it. But if not, we're going to value the conversation either way. So that's what you should expect today. Before we get into today's topic, we are hitting our 100th show in a couple weeks. On March 24th, that will be our 100th episode of this podcast. And we want to celebrate the impact this show has had on you for that. To do that, we want to share stories straight from you. For those of you who have sent them in, thank you for that. If you haven't sent a story, but you still want to send a story, you can do that before Thursday, March 20th. You can send written stories to hello@tensionpodcast.com. You can record an audio message and send it to hello@tensionpodcast.com or send it to me on Instagram at Jonathan_Carone. Or you can record a video message and we'll share those on YouTube as well. Send those to hello@tensionpodcast.com or to me on Instagram. But in that message, we'd love to hear about how an episode made you think about something in a new way, how it maybe encouraged you or made you feel like you weren't alone, or how it helped you have a hard conversation with others just that are in your life. Whatever the impact, we want to hear it because as we've told you before, and as you might be living through right now, depending on where you stand on the political aisle, it can be hard around here sometimes. And so we're going to take a week to celebrate and to focus on the good things. So that's coming up in a few weeks, and we hope you'll join us for that. For today, though, this episode's similar to one we talked about a couple weeks, but feels even dirtier. There are parts of Jesus I don't necessarily like. This topic was actually introduced to me by a former senior pastor of a megachurch. He hosts a small group with 20-somethings that he calls skeptical Christians, people who are following Jesus but have questions. And he always sends them a question before they get to the small group for them to be thinking through so that they can come in and have an honest discussion as part of their small group. And one of the weeks that he said he valued the most was he texted them a couple of days before and said, hey, I want you to be thinking of a part of Jesus that you don't actually like. And he said when they first got to the small group, it got really awkward. So he led the way. He broke the ice with something he didn't like. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. It might feel wrong to say these things because we're supposed to love Jesus completely and fully. But if I'm honest, there are parts of him I don't necessarily like. So kind of like we did a couple weeks ago, we're just going to bring a couple ideas to the table and then talk through them. Eric, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
You start the first one, and then I'll get one in there. Just so we can kind of set the mood, get the vibe going.
Well, I'm going to bring the vibe all the way down.
Oh, all right, cool.
Because I don't like that Jesus picks and chooses who he heals.
Yikes.
He has the ability to heal anyone.
Sure.
With just the sound of his voice. He could think it and it would be done. And I don't like that he chooses not to do that with certain people. I
Now,
wish
are
I
you
understood the
talking
thought
about it
process.
from like just the scripture perspective, or like now?
Yes,
Okay,
because he's the same today, yesterday, and forever. So he could still
sure.
choose to heal someone today. Like, I wish I understood his thought process for why he'll heal a person who's an absolute dick, but then he'll let the mom of an 8-year-old die from cancer.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it and I don't like it. So I'm leading off with I don't like that Jesus picks and chooses who he heals.
Okay.
There you go. Do something with that.
Oh, that was it. Just
That
that
was
was
it.
it.
Like,
Yeah. So what? Well, let me ask you why. Why do you think that is? Like, what's the what is the as you're rationalizing it? What's the rational reason for that?
the reason why I don't like it,
No, no. The reason why it actually happens. Like, what? Why wouldn't? Why wouldn't a loving God just heal everything?
he knows more than we do.
Yeah. What are we
He
supposed to learn from that? Like
like
what is it?
I don't know. The thing that we've always been taught is that like he's good, which I agree with,
Yep.
and
Yep.
he sees the full story, which we don't. Which okay,
Sure.
and that he can use anything, even bad things, for his good and our good.
Yeah.
And intellectually, I know that, but I've also seen that 8-year-old over the past year after her mom died,
Oh yeah.
and so it's like I can intellectually know something to be true, but emotionally, like I don't like that. I
Right.
wish it were different. Like I wish that I see that dad post things on Facebook and he's still torn up about it almost a year later, which I totally understand. Like I, I see their pain and I'm like, what is good about that? Like I wish
Right.
that Jesus could have just said the words and she'd still be here.
Yep.
And insert your story or anyone's story for that person because we all know someone who was taken away too soon.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I don't.
So so then the logical question I have afterwards is like, why continue to follow Jesus despite knowing that you don't like this about him?
Because I know that he's good.
Okay.
I have enough evidence otherwise to know that he's good. And I
All
know
right.
what he did on the cross. And I
Uh-huh.
know, like, I know that I don't, even though I don't understand it, there's something there with it. And I've said it before on here, like, sometimes having faith requires faith.
Yep.
And like, I'm never going to understand that until he and I are sitting around having a burger in the new heaven at our favorite burger joint when he comes to visit my part of the new earth. And
Yep.
I can ask him, but and even then, I probably still won't get it because I won't have the full knowledge. But I know him well enough to know that there had to be a reason for it that I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, and part of it too, I'm thinking like obviously stepping back a step from the emotional because it is tough. But if I could step back a second from the emotional, it's like maybe part of it is also to help us understand um, not to have full dependence on this world. Now,
Mm-hmm.
we've done a lot of talking over even this season, but like on how much more we need to focus on this world because there is definitely that brand of Christianity or that there's that hidden gene inside of us that says, oh yeah, we don't need to worry about this and this earthly tent, focus on heaven. We did talk about some of the socioeconomic differences and how depending on, your race and things like
Mm-hmm.
that, sometimes, right? Like you focus on the world more than you focus on the world to come. But maybe there is a bit to what, whether you want to call it suffering or the idea of not being healed that
Well, it
helps us.
emphasizes a brokenness in our world that
Yeah.
if we look at everything through a gospel lens, like death was never meant to be a part of what we
Yep.
experienced. That was never part of God's original plan. It was only through sin was entered the world that death existed. And so unfortunately, death is a reminder of that. Yes. So there is a tension ding between
Huh.
knowing that Jesus has the ability to fix it
Yep.
if he chooses to. And I don't this may be theologically inaccurate, and for the Theo bros who for some reason listen to the show, like I'm working this out as I say it, but like I can't even say that Jesus doesn't want to heal someone. It's just that he chooses not to. I believe that he may want to do something, but he knows the bigger picture. Like, because we know he did not want to go to the cross. We know he begged his father for any other way out. So even though he would do it and knew it was needed, he didn't want to do that. So a logical step from that is there are things that he wishes he could do, but because he knows more than we do, he knows he shouldn't or he can't, even though he would want to. And for me, even though I don't like that he chooses not to, my trust in him is at a point where I have to go, if I trust him, I don't get it, but I'm going to choose to trust it. And that doesn't take the pain away. That doesn't make me like it anymore or not like it any less. But it's kind of like I'm somewhat contradicting myself from our first episode of the year where I said that understanding our feelings don't make them go away. They just make you understand them more. But sometimes understanding our feelings do help or does help. And so it helps me understand it a little more when I think through it in that, even though I don't like it.
Yeah. And I've just, kind of put a button on this too, is like, I think the big difference, if you want to give a plug for something you've got going on too, but like the big difference, after leaving ministry, full-time paid ministry, big difference now of approaching this as opposed to when I was in full-time paid ministry is like, there's this sense that I would have to make this okay in this discussion and go like, oh, well, God knows more than we, and like have an answer. But I think it's okay for me to go, yeah, I don't like that either. And it sucks. And that's okay that it sucks. And it's okay that I don't know the answer. And it's okay that I think Jesus can handle the fact that we don't like that little bit. I think in the same way as you've got friends or even your spouse or whatever, where it's like, I don't like when you do that. There are aspects about that. I wish you wouldn't, whatever, right? Or whatever like that. And it's like, it's okay. It's okay to exist in that tension a little bit.
And I think if you can't admit there are things about your spouse that you don't necessarily like all the time, then like you're not being honest with yourself. Because I love my wife completely, but there are some things she does that I'm like, you know what? I wish she wouldn't do that. Like,
share 4 or 5 of them.
No,
don't do it.
She doesn't listen, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like,
don't do it. But but the difference, I mean, going down that road, the difference is how much do you allow it to affect you or impact your relationship? Because if it's something like, God, I don't really like that happens, but it's like the mature part of you goes, I can move on from that. Yeah. I don't have to allow it to affect me. My reaction to whether or not I like something is the most important part. So I think in these discussions, it's okay for you not to like something about Jesus. It's the degree of okay or not comes in your reaction to that. Yeah. So.
All right, give us one from your side.
Mine is I don't like that Jesus left us with so many unanswered questions. I don't like that. I don't like that we have a Bible and we had God on earth and we don't have definitive answers. I know that's not
very close to my next one I was going to share. So yeah.
Yeah. And you started off with like very deep, but why doesn't he speak to certain things? Why do we have the issues that we have politically? Like, how are we supposed to talk about the internet or AI or climate change and apply that to the Bible? And I think it'd be a lot easier, not that Jesus could have, but like maybe, I don't know. Like, I just wish there was a more definitive thing, because right now, a lot of the arguments that we have are over our negotiation with the text because it's not clear in the text. And no matter how clear you think it is, to your view on abortion, to your view on migration or immigrants, to your view on anything that's become kind of this political ping pong ball, or, this political bargaining chip that divides us. It's like, could Jesus have clearly said certain things? Yes. And I think some of us would say he did, but it's not clear enough. Because if I said, love your neighbor, who's my neighbor? Oh my God. And he literally gives us a a parable about like, oh yeah, the person you hate the most, that's also your neighbor, and they were more neighborly than the rest of your friends. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, it's like that feels very clear, but there's still enough wiggle room that you know a-hole Christians are like, well, technically, no, they're not our neighbor, and yeah, yeah, blah, blah, blah. It's like, stop. So it's just, if even in like major theological debates, like, why is there Calvinism versus Arminianism right now? Why do we have predestination versus free will, or whatever you want to call the argument? The bottom line is, like, I wish we didn't have to have this podcast,
Yeah.
because it basically, all the reasons why we have this podcast, Jesus could have answered. Jesus could have just straight up answered. Even in like John, John 18, where the question is literally like, what is truth? And he doesn't even answer it. It's like, okay, what's going to happen at the end? Like, are we really in the end times? Can you tell, Sister Karen over there that we're not actually in the end times? Like, can we just be okay with that? Like, I don't know. Why didn't he just answer all the questions?
Yeah. I mean, the way I had phrased it in my notes was, I don't like that Jesus wasn't explicit about how we take care of people, which is, it's a version of what you're saying as well. So it's slightly different, but in the same realm of like,
Yeah, I was trying to give you a big picture, and then you could
yeah,
hone in on what's a
yeah. So I mean,
specific.
ultimately, like, that's probably the biggest. I mean, the one I said first is the heaviest, but the most practical day to day one is this one. Like, I wish he wasn't so philosophical in his teaching. Like, even in there, it says that like some will get it, some won't get it. I'm like, dude, I don't get it. Like, or I think I get
Right.
it, but I've got all these other people telling me I'm wrong about it, and so that's what we're arguing about. Like, this week, I mean, you guys know we record these a couple weeks in advance, but this week, JD Vance legitimately said that we're like, it's a Christian principle to take care of your own family before you take care of others. And the whole debate that sparked around who's my neighbor again, it's the same freaking debate that's been going on since Jesus's time. And like, if he would have actually given us the list of like, who do we take care of first? Who do we take care of second? Who do we take care of third? Which JD Vance was trying to say, the Bible does say that his argument is the Bible says we take care of our family and then our community, and then it goes out from there, like rings, whatever. That's not explicit in the Bible. That's a reading
Right.
and a negotiated understanding of the Bible. But I can point to, and many people have, a totally different argument that we are to take care of everyone, and that everyone is part of God's family, and that we are to take, if we see a need, we are to take care of it. Not that there are these rings of who we take care of most. And if Jesus would have just been explicit, like, just give us a list, like give us a BuzzFeed listicle of people we're supposed to take care of, then it would have been a lot easier in today's world.
Yep. So, branching off of that, my next one is similar as well. Is like, I don't like that Jesus tells us to forgive people who don't deserve it. I don't like that I don't get to pick who's worthy of forgiveness. Like, yeah, sure, I'm glad that there is, like, the whole, I was dead in my trespasses and sins, and God, blah 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 blah. Yeah, great, got it. Okay,
I'm
get
glad
super
he
saved.
forgives
Thank you.
everyone. I wish he didn't make me.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like, there is a bit, and we alluded to it earlier, and I've talked about it on social media now, especially like with the political climate now against migrants and everything else like that with Christians, is like there is a bit of that Jonah Ninevites thing where Jonah's like, I'm pissed at you, God, because you forgave them. I knew you'd freaking forgive them, and I'm upset about that. It's like, part of me wants to look and go, yeah, Jonah, you don't be such a Jonah, you're dumb, right? Go back in that whale. But part of me is like, yeah, I don't want to
I
forgive
get
those
it.
people. Yeah, there are Ninevites in my world that I'm like, I don't want to forgive them. And I don't, there's things that happen to me. And there's things, more importantly, there's things that have happened to other people in my life that I'm like, that person that did that thing, that person that I love, I want to hate them and I
Hmm.
want to not forgive them and I want to be bitter. And, how can you, I don't know. It's just tough. But it's like, what is that line between forgiveness and accountability? And how can I accept forgiveness without also being forgiving? So I understand, but I don't like it. I just don't like it. I'm on my front porch and I'm shaking my fist at the kids on my grass.
I mean, that's what this whole episode is, though. It's like the things that we don't like, and I think just processing yours on the fly here, like you said, the line between forgiveness and accountability, and I think the hard part about that is going back to him being explicit about some of these teachings. It's like, Jesus, can you teach me how to forgive someone but still not like them? Like, how do I love my neighbor but really not like them? Because I think that's okay. Like, I don't think we're called to be best friends with everyone or to like everyone. There are plenty of people who, like, I just don't like being around. And I'm sure there are many more who don't like being around me. Like, personality wise, we're not all going to click. So, Jesus,
Or
how,
even just Jesus saying it's okay to you can forgive this person and not want to be around them.
yeah,
Because I feel like that's right, but there's nothing that says that.
right.
There's nothing that explicitly says you can forgive that person and not hold malice against them in their heart, but you don't have to forget. You don't have to have a relationship. And I think that gets manipulated on both sides. But man, wouldn't it be much easier if it was clear on some of that? Going back to my original one, right? Like, wouldn't it be much clearer if it was like, hey, this is what forgiveness is? It's releasing it inside so you don't have any other malice or anger. We still hold them accountable for their consequences. And you don't have to necessarily accept the invite to Thanksgiving again. You don't have to pick up their call when they call you. That's not being unloving. Like, make it easier for me so I know where the boundaries are on what forgiveness looks like.
Well, and even I'm thinking through some relational things that I have, and I'm going to be polite to everyone. Whether I like them or not, I'm going to be polite. And for me, that can sometimes feel like I'm being fake because, like, they know I don't like them. I know they don't like me, but like, I I believe because of what Jesus taught that we're supposed to be loving and caring towards people. So I'm going to treat them that way, even if I don't necessarily want to be in a relationship with them, friendship, whatever. But it would have been really nice if he could have given us a playbook for that so that I
Yep.
didn't, because culturally, the culture is telling me I'm fake if I do that.
Right.
Like, because, oh, I'm just putting on, I'm just being a fake friend. Like, no, I'm trying to love the best I can and be as polite as I can, even if I don't necessarily like the person. But there's that, again, tension between what the culture says is being a fake person versus I'm trying to do what I think Jesus said and the
Yeah.
way he's taught us to be. And that's just like, of all the things we talk about, that is like the lowest of low down, like of importance of like me feeling
Yeah.
like I'm being a fake person. But on a day-to-day thing, that's probably one of the ones that I feel the most.
Yeah, I mean, think about like even his answer to how many times should I forgive someone who's offended me? He's like 7 times, 7 times, 70 times. You're like, that's not an answer. That's that's like, yeah,
That's the
there is
answer
no
you
limit.
give your kid when you want them to shut up and go away.
Right? Yeah, because I said so. That's basically it. He gave you a "cause I said so," and that was it. So even on a direct, some things, maybe that's part of it. It's like, I don't like that Jesus didn't answer questions directly.
Yeah.
Going back to the other one is, how many times should I forgive somebody? Wouldn't it just be easier instead of all of us, listening to our pastor's sermon on how to interpret that, to be like, here's the deal. If Jesus would have said, here's the deal. Uh, if you don't forgive, it is like you drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Forgiveness is for you, it's not for them. Oh. Oh, got it. So you need to forgive them as many times as it's going to release that feeling within you of control over the situation. Like that's what I believe, but it doesn't explicitly
I
say
can't
that.
go chapter and verse for that.
No, yeah, it's like, can you tell? It's like, no, I don't really know. So yeah, it does leave room for the JD Vances of the world, uh, or the manipulative pastors of the world to say, on either side. And like that, and that's the other piece is like, well, I don't like that forgiveness is situational. Oh, when lead pastor, goes through, dozens and dozens of cases of assault and inappropriateness, we need to get together as a church and forgive them right away.
Well, hey, can I
It's
take
like,
it away from the
oh,
church?
yeah, go for it.
The patron saint of all things financial, Dave Ramsey.
Ooh, let's hear it. Live like no one else, so you live like no one else.
His company is built on quote unquote Christian principles.
Oof. Yep.
They fired a woman for getting pregnant out of wedlock because it went against the company policy.
Yep.
One of his executives was caught having multiple affairs.
Uh-oh.
Dude was not fired. So it goes back to what you were just saying. It's like the playbook, I think, is there. Like what deserves forgiveness and what doesn't. So the man who's a VP brings a lot of value to the organization. So he gets to go through a restoration process. The woman, she's just a worker, so she doesn't deserve the same forgiveness. Like, I think I'm pretty sure what Jesus would say there, but I have seen dozens and dozens of Christians defend Dave Ramsey keeping the executive in the name of restoration and forgiveness, but the woman still lost her job for getting pregnant out of wedlock.
Yep.
Well, she shouldn't have done that.
Yep.
Well, neither should the guy who couldn't keep it in his pants either. So,
Right.
like, where's the line of forgiveness there?
Yep.
Are you trying not to get on a Dave Ramsey soapbox right now?
Yeah, I am trying. I am really trying.
Have we finally found the
the?
soapbox that Eric doesn't want to get on publicly?
I know. I don't. And in the notes, everybody needs to see that. Eric, try to keep this serious because you weren't so serious the last time. I don't want people to get the wrong idea about you. So I
I literally
appreciate
wrote
that Jonathan he's policing, he wants to preserve my witness essentially with everybody.
Just go.
But like,
Say what you want to say.
oh my gosh, what I don't like is why didn't Jesus say, "Hey, let me just make a list of a couple of people that you're not going to understand it now, okay? All right? Person who is writing this down for Luke, like you're not going to understand this now. I'm going to go through you went through the genealogy. Let me go through the ass hattery. These people are all ass hats, okay? And just go through it. Like list them off.
Please
from
give me
zero.
Top 5 list. Go.
Top 5. I mean, top 5. Can we talk about a top 5 right now today? Like top 5, you go Trump. Okay, great. Don't listen to that guy. Okay, number 2, Mark Driscoll. Don't listen to that guy. Okay, all right. Let's talk about number 3, Dave Ramsey. Good. That'll be great nuance. Good for people that are trying to get out of debt. Not great for like long-term financial thing. Like debt is okay. Credit cards
Or following me.
Yeah, right. Oh gosh. So it's like there's a list that I just wish it would be like, oh, by the way, because think about in all of the shows and movies that involve time travel. What would be some things you would do if you could go back in time? Obviously, you'd warn some people, right? You'd be like, invest in this thing called Apple, invest in, these things. And like, oh, bet on this person to win the World Series. And then go back and be like, and oh, by the way, don't listen to so-and-so because that person is a complete tool bag.
So, to somewhat rescue this, the third thing I have written down is I don't like that Jesus came 2,000 years ago to a culture that I don't understand, can't relate to, and in a language that I don't speak.
Yeah, when there wasn't photos or video.
Like, if I'm being honest, like completely honest, I don't like that because I don't get it today. There are so
Wait,
many things I have
hold
to
on,
negotiate
Jonathan.
today.
Jesus didn't come for me specifically. You mean it wasn't an American-centric, white, middle-class, American cisgendered male thing? Oh no.
Even taking that away, like just the fact that I have to go through and recognize that these books were written to people in a culture I don't live in that is completely different from what I know in a language that has been translated 2 to 3 times since then. Like, I don't like that he chose them to come to instead of me
Yep.
because him coming then and not coming now makes it harder for me to follow him today. Like, could you imagine if he would have came with the internet? Like,
Great.
Jesus' entire ministry was in like a 10 square mile block.
Yep.
Like his entire ministry, maybe a little bigger than that, but it was not very big. Like for me to get from here to my doctor's office and back is a further trip than anywhere Jesus went in his entire ministry on earth. So it's like if he came today and could like do an Instagram live or if he was on Twitch and like it would be so much easier than having to listen to or read through a book that has been translated and negotiated. And the thing that keeps popping in my head, I recently saw a TikTok from Dan McClellan. And for those of you who don't know Dan McClellan, he is a legit Bible scholar. He knows the scholarship of the Bible. He comes from the Mormon faith. He is a Mormon in his faith, but he comes from a scholarship of the Bible. And so he knows the history of the text and all that. So um, if you want to know those things, he's got some good stuff. I will say on the front end, there are times that I have to limit how much I listen to him because of the questions that it brings from the scholarship side of things that sometimes can be unhealthy for me. So I'm just throwing that out there. But he made a video recently talking about how slavery, the way we view it, had to be negotiated in the text. Like we have all negotiated the Bible to say that slavery is bad, but that was not the
That the
universal
Bible says
thought,
slavery is
or
bad.
that the Bible says slavery is bad. Excuse me. That was not the universal thought of the Bible until 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Like it was renegotiated of what the Bible said about slavery. And so when I think about all silliness aside, what do I not like about Jesus? The fact that he came in a time that I don't understand. To follow him requires so much ambiguity. It is not clear. It is not concise. It is not direct. Who is my neighbor? Okay, like so the woman who was at the well, she had 5 previous husbands. The man she was living with now wasn't her husband. And so in my mind, that makes me think, okay, she's with a man who she's dating and she's just living with because that's what my culture says. There are some interpretations that say that she is living with a man who's not her husband because she chooses to be promiscuous. And so, but that also degrades the woman. There are some who would say that the woman was being forced to live with the man, not necessarily that it was a consensual sexual relationship, but that for some reason, maybe it was because she had to sell herself into sex slavery to afford to be able to live in the culture, that the man she was living with was forcing her into a sexually abusive relationship. I don't know what her living condition was. And the fact that the text includes that little piece that Jesus said to her, the man you're living with now is not your husband. The interpretation of that phrase changes the interpretation of the passage and the application and the understanding of who that woman was. And the fact that he came to a culture that I don't understand and I didn't live in, and he wasn't clear about who she is, that passage can now be used to teach 37 different things, and probably 35 of them were bad.
Yep. Yeah, that there
Say it.
yeah, it's no, I don't, it's fine. It's just like, why it Jesus came in a time in a place that we don't understand. and in a lot of ways aren't directly applicable to us. And that is frustrating, you know, that it's basically along the idea. What I was going to say for my last was like, I don't like that Jesus left us with so many unanswered questions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like not only did he not explicitly say some things, but the fact that there are so many questions unanswered. Because do you think that he could have also orchestrated the history of time so that we didn't have to worry about discussions about abortion or AI or women in leadership, or, you know, all of the things that people get up in arms about now? Yeah, he
All of
probably
those
could
things are
have.
because of his ambiguity.
Right.
Like, think about every issue we have in the church today. Almost, I mean, they're all sin related, yes, but almost to a T, every single one of them can be justified by a reading of scripture and a twisting of it, because
Yep.
there was not a clear, concise statement from Jesus, who was in a different culture, who did not
Uh,
have 501c3 mega churches. Like,
right. And also, the other aspect is he's not here to mediate the discussion. And yes, you could be like, well, he, you know, technically gave it to the church and, you know, Catholics and the Pope, and
you
now
saw
the
how well
line of the
that
Pope.
went.
Yeah, right. It's like, okay, great. That's not awesome either. But like, there isn't actual Jesus here to help mediate some of these questions,
And
which would
so,
make it so much easier.
yeah, we, at this point, to continue this conversation really just goes in circles,
Yeah.
because all of it comes back to these basic things, like, why didn't Jesus do this, or why didn't he do that? And what I want you to hear today is not necessarily like a criticism of Jesus. It's just, these are honest things that I think if we're going to try to follow Jesus authentically, we have to admit to ourselves. Like, none of these things changes my opinion of who Jesus is or what he has done
Right.
for us. Like, I
Right.
fully trust him even when I don't get it. I may not do what he says because it sounds scary, but I know he's good, and it's my selfish desires keeping me from doing what he says. I admit that.
Yeah.
But I think if we want to have a real relationship with him, just like if I want to have a healthy relationship with Nicole, I've got to admit to myself that there are things that she does that I don't like, but I'm going to say, you know what? She does that. I don't like it, but it's not like, I love her so much as a human being that these small things are not going to keep me from loving her well. And
Yeah.
what would keep me from loving her well is burying down those little things that I don't like and not admitting they're there, because then they just become annoying and annoying and annoying. But if we can say, you know what? I don't like it. I
Right.
don't like this piece of Jesus. I don't like this thing that he did or did not do. I still trust him. I'm still going to follow him, but I don't like that. Then I think there is some freedom, and um, I think not that he's more accepting, but I think he's so accepting of us fully who we are, that there is some thankfulness on his part that you would trust him enough with the parts you don't like about him.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, asking yourself, you know, there's so many times that we're compared to children, and God is the father, obviously. But like, when your children don't like something that is good for them, or that they have to do, or that you can't explain in a way that they're going to understand, how do you want them to react? It's like, in our house, like, yeah, you could be angry, but in your anger, you cannot do these things. You can't be mean. You can't, you know, other things like that. So you can be angry. You don't have to like it. And I'm going to walk through that with you. But like, here's some boundaries and guardrails. And with that, do you need to take a beat? You need to go to your room. Do you need to go outside? You want to
But hey,
do
even
something
in,
else?
I'm
Like,
going to interrupt real quick. Like, with our daughter,
yeah,
she has a lot of sensory issues with food, and there's a lot of food she
yeah,
doesn't like. And it annoys me so much when she tries something and she like takes one bite and doesn't like it. I'm like, Liv, why don't you like that? Well, I don't know. Just tell me why. Like, what is it you don't like? Well, I
right,
don't know. And it took us so long to figure out, like, the sensory stuff inside her mouth, which I have similar things, but I mean, she's
Is
9
it
now, but
squishy? Is it,
yeah.
all that
And so
stuff?
there are certain textures that she doesn't like. And now that I know that, and now that she's told me she doesn't like that, then I can understand when she has a reaction better. So I
Yeah.
think for us as followers of Jesus, if we can just figure out the things we don't like and admit, I don't like this and here's why, then
Yeah.
that actually will help us follow Jesus more authentically because we've been honest with ourselves instead of just trying to put on the good Christian boy, good Christian girl hat and comply and follow
Yeah.
Jesus without asking the questions or admitting the hard stuff. If we can admit these things, I think it opens up an authentic relationship with Jesus that's not there if we don't admit it.
Right. Yep. I agree.
So, hey, we found the point. We got there. It took us a while. It was like we walked around like the Israelites in Egypt or leaving Egypt and couldn't figure it out for a while, but we got there. Um, but that's it for today. Next week, we're going to continue with another conversation. Next week is about how I think American individualism is a cancer within the church that's slowly been killing us for the last 40 years. So, not that that's a heavy topic or anything. If you want to listen to
Yeah.
that, go ahead
Very,
and
that's very broad too. It's not a very,
subscribe.
we're not calling out anybody or anything in particular.
But I have thoughts, and I think it's something that I have had this conversation with people and taking it outside of it. This is not a political conversation next week, by the way. It has political applications, but it is not a political by
Try
nature.
me.
Um, so it is a societal issue within our hearts and our ways that we are approaching the world that I think we have let a mindset creep into the church that was never meant to be there, that is slowly killing us from the inside out. If you want that episode, you can subscribe wherever you get podcasts, subscribe on YouTube. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please give us a rating and review. If you watch on YouTube, go ahead and hit that like button. If you have a story for us for our 100th episode, we need to get those in by Thursday, March the 20th. You can send those to me at Jonathan_Caron on Instagram, or you can email them to us at hello@tensionpodcast.com. If you want to send something to Eric, send it to Eric too. He's at EricW712 on all the major platforms. If you want to send a question or tell us why you think we're wrong about all this, feel free to do that. hello@tensionpodcast.com. But as always, if you like this episode, the best thing you can do to help us is to share it with a friend so they can get something out of it too. Ultimately, though, we hope you have a great week. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will talk to you again next week. Have a good one, everybody.